Alright, so today we are looking at function notation, evaluating functions from an equation, and then 4.4 will evaluate functions from a graph as well. So the first thing that we need to know is that f is a function of x. That can be written like this. So you're going to do an f, open parentheses, put an x inside. When we read that, we say f of x. So it's read as f of x. We don't have the word of there. That's what that is read as. Instead of having equations that are y equals, we are now going to most of the time have equations that are f of x equals. So this is called function notation, and it's just a different way to write the same thing. So just know that instead of y equals, it's f of x equals. We're going to be evaluating using this function notation. What we're going to do is we are going to plug in a number for x. When we plug in that number, we need to show work, and then we just simplify it out. And so I will show you how much of that work you need to show. So we've got 3 examples and 1 other little part. Let's start looking at these. So the first one we have is given f of x equals 2x squared minus 5. We want to find f of negative 2. So what that means is that instead of having f of x, so f of any variable, we want to plug in negative 2 for this x value. So when we plug that in, we're going to show our work. We're going to still have our 2. And then where the x is, we're plugging in negative 2 in parentheses, squared, minus 5. Okay, from there, we can choose whether we want to plug all of that into a calculator or whether we want to work it out by hand. For notes, we are going to do both, just so that you have both methods, and then you can choose which you do. You have to write that down regardless of whether you do it in a calculator or you work it out by hand. You have to write down that step of plugging in negative 2 for x. So if I were to do this by hand, I would need to do order of operations. So PIMDAS or GEMS or whatever you want to do it as, but my exponents need to go first. So I would do negative 2 squared. What is negative 2 squared? What does it mean to square something? Times it by itself. What is negative 2 times itself? Positive 4. So negative 2 squared is going to be positive 4. So I'm going to have 2 times 4 minus 5. And then 2 times 4 is 8. So then I've got 8 minus 5, which is 3. Okay. If you were to choose to do it in your calculator instead of doing it by hand or like in your head, you would need to plug in this entire top row, including the parentheses. If you do not plug in those parentheses, you will not get the right answer because your calculator doesn't know what order of operations you want to do. So I would get 3. So you need to write this down. You need to write this down. If you don't write those 2 things down in between, that's fine. It is a even day. All right, any questions? All right, next one. We have given g of x equals 7x minus 11. So this g of x, that's just us naming our function something else so that we can know, we can have multiple functions. So you can have any function of x. So we've got g of x equals 7x minus 11. We want to find g of 3. So that means we're going to plug in 3 for x. So it's going to be 7 times 3 minus 11. Seven times 3 is 21. So that's 21 minus 11. And then 21 minus 11 is 10. And we could have done 7 times 3 minus 11 in a calculator if we wanted to. Okay. Last one we have on here, and then we've got this weird one here. It's not hard, it's just different. We've got given h of x equals 1/3 x plus 2. We want to find h of 6. So we want to plug in 6 for x. So that's going to be 1/3 times 6 plus 2. What is 1/3 of 6? 2. If we were to take 6 and split it up into thirds, it would be 2. So that's going to be 2 plus 2, which is 4. If you wanted to do that fraction in a calculator, you would do 1 divided by 3, open parentheses, plug in that 6. 1/3 of 6 plus 2 is 4. Right. Last thing on here, after you evaluate all of your functions, we're going to ask you to do some operations with the solutions to your functions. So this is asking us to find f of -2 plus g of 3. What you're going to do is you're going to go back and look at your answers. Here we only have 3 answers. On your worksheet you'll have like 9 or 12 to deal with. You'll find f of -2. So I know that f of -2 is 3. Plus, I want to add that to g of 3. I now know that g of 3 is 10. So we've already done that work of finding f of -2 and finding g of 3. So then literally all we want to do is 3 plus 10, which is 13. What's up? So if you are, so like in an application where you have multiple functions and then you're trying to like, so if you're trying to find like, or like comparing cost and revenue, so you would take your cost function, or you would take your revenue function and subtract your cost in order to find your profit. Something like that. Okay, on your assignment, the front side, it's split up, it's organized. So find f of x, you're going to use that function 3 times. G of x, you're going to use that function 3 times. Same with h of x, you're going to use that function 3 times, okay? On the back of your assignment, it gives you 3 functions, f of x, g of x, and h of x. They're different than the ones on the front, they're different than the ones on the notes too. You have to use the right function in the right spot. So this says find f of 4, so we have to use this function. This next one, find h of -2, so we need to use this function. So you got to use the right function in the right spot. And then this down here, we are adding, subtracting, multiplying. So pay attention to that. They're not all addition. Any questions right now? Okay, I'm going to stop this video.